Having small details in video games can make the experiences you're having a much better one. I know for myself, when a new video game launches, I try to run around the world and take in everything as much as possible. This allows me to feel immersed. I remember when New World launched, and shortly after, they added in music. Some players would even stand in settlements and play music as they got tipped. Some people even take it as far to stay in character. Now this reminds me of when people used to ask me for money in my city or in my neighborhood, but they weren't playing music, they were doing drugs. We heard about Constellations back in November for the Cleric class update. Now, at the beginning of April, when Steven did the Q&A with the content creators, we heard even more. We got a lot of cool information. I'll let my man from downtown in my city take care of it today. Davis, come here.
Hey, hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell for my main man, SticQeno. Some of y'all know him as Q, but yeah, hey, you said you gonna pay me, right? Pay me for what? Hey, Q, I'm doing bad. Look at what I got on. I'm hurting out here. Come on, take care of me.
Here's the first clip that we saw back in November regarding Constellations.
Day and night cycles in the Ashes of Creation are actually over the course of a few hours between those night cycles. So you're going to see the trees move all real rapidly, and you're going to see the sun drop rapidly, and then you're going to see the night sky begin to form. And we're going to try to identify some constellations if we can, because constellations and Ashes of Creation actually have a very relevant purpose across a whole host of different game systems, including on the narrative side, on mechanics like acquiring certain types of relics for your node, on empowering certain abilities and or items that you have access to. And it is, of course, relevant that I am playing as a Vec. Vec, as many of you may know, do worship and obviously study the stars. Now, we are trying to look, we need each of us to kind of look in the sky in certain directions to identify one of these constellations. And I think what we are looking for is what was once called a Bagormal, but now is called a Dawn Breaker, I believe. So try to look all around as you can in the night sky and identify the location of the Dawnbreaker. Where is the Dawnbreaker? I am not yet seeing it. Are any of you seeing it? I don't see...
Not fun then.
Can we not find the Dawnbreaker? Maybe we'll find another one of them. Where is it? Hold on. It should have told me where it was. Oh, there we go! We found the Dawnbreaker! Do you guys... Oh, it's right next to the destroyed moon.
So we know that constellations will affect the narrative on your server. In my last video where I talked about story arcs, I imagine that constellations will have some sort of collaborating effect on story arcs. As you saw in the clip, Steven had to actually search for the constellation. But there's a catch here. He knows where everything is going to be, how it should look, feel, sound, you name it. And it's simply because he's the creator of the game. For someone like you and I, who don't know as much as Steven, we're going to have to go boots to the ground and turn over every rock because we don't know where they're going to be. It also drives a very interesting point because we haven't seen anything that has required us to find constellations. So that tells me a server can live its life without ever seeing one. How will that affect the server? Now, what if a server has found every constellation known? How will that then affect the server and the story? Personally, I'd like to see how constellations can change the stories on the servers that we're playing on. It might even be beneficial to never even see one, but somehow I doubt that. Node relics might be a sleeper in terms of content that's played. I haven't really heard much from anyone in the community regarding them. Now, node relics are achievements that unlock over time for nodes. They allow you to craft legendary items and progress legendary quest lines. The best way to describe this is, think of if you go hunting and you come back with the animal's head as a trophy. Think deer, moose, you name it. I'm going to talk more about this in another video because there's so much to cover on this topic. Since node relics are a bigger piece of content in themselves, you'll want to do constellations in order to move forward with them. Constellations are providing a huge incentive here, and that's the node relics, because the node relic is going to go back to your node and build that up even more. There are passive and active benefits from having node relics. I think this in itself is a driving force to search for constellations. We know that everything is built around the node system, so having another feature that further explores that is always going to be a win. Constellations can empower certain abilities and items that we have. So when I heard about this back in November, I was and still am super interested in this, because does this mean now we get to run around with a small buff to certain abilities? I'm sure the content is going to be challenging, but how much are constellations going to help us out in terms of doing the content? What percentage of a buff are we going to get? When similar features launch in other games, they have to go through several patches to get it right, because when it first launches, it's OP. When they patch it, it's useless, right? And I'm sure Intrepid is going to have their fair share of issues. And on the other hand, we could be looking into this way too deep. It could just be a small buff, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. We don't know what items or abilities are going to be empowered under the influence of constellations, but what if the Vec got a slightly higher buff than any other race because it's part of their lore? It's something I've been thinking about for a while. It's probably nothing though. So far, constellations are doing way more than I think any of us would have initially imagined, and that's amazing. There's content within content here. Constellations seem to be providing more for us in the long run than they are taking from us, because the only thing that's required from us is our time. What are your thoughts on constellations? Please let me know in the comment section below. I leave you off with the most recent clip that we got regarding constellations. If you haven't created an Ashes of Creation account and need to, feel free to use my link in the description below. If you want to hop in a Discord, listen man, we got a community for you. Feel free to join ours, again, in the description below. If you haven't, feel free to follow me on Twitter and Twitch to stay up to date with what I'm doing. I stream the live monthly updates, all right? I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
How exactly does the constellation system work? You've stated that it'll be very relevant to the system, such as narrative, empowering abilities and items, and gathering relics, but how do they tie into these systems exactly?
So the constellation system is another predicate system. And when I say it's a predicate system, it means that certain conditions will yield certain constellations being available to pursue, discover, and achieve. And they span the realm of interfacing across adventuring level, artisanship, node, relics, policies. Like there's a lot of different things that constellations can touch, because at its essence, it is a predicate system. Now, once players have achieved identifying a certain location that yields a constellation, and they've checked off that box, okay, I have achieved this thing, it can serve its purpose for kicking off a new storyline for that individual, kicking off a new storyline for that individual's micro communities or pseudo factions if necessary, right? It can serve as a broader kickoff. One person discovers it, 300, 400, 500 people get to participate now in it. That's an opportunity. It can yield the location of an achievable world relic that can be brought back home to a particular node. There's a lot of different things that are possible. In order to see the constellation and to actually achieve that, it could be just as simple as looking at your character's viewport into the night sky at a certain location at a certain time. It could be far more in depth, which is killing a certain raid boss for a particular number of times until it drops a particular item that yields a map that sends you to a location that stands as a, like, there's a lot of different layers that can get added on. How do we manifest a particular constellation? The intent here is to provide an immersive system that keeps the player in the world and allows their in-world movement and interactions and immersiveness to yield a result that's unique. And that, I think, is a fun and compelling interaction, especially as it relates to adventuring.